Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
We are all born worthy. The way I think about it is that we are born with a well of worth and confidence. And a simple, perhaps, representation of that is when you look at a newborn. This newborn really has done nothing. He's just there. He hasn't acquired any accolades, any accomplishment. And yet, this newborn is so valuable. Our value is inherent and innate within us. However, as we go from infanthood to childhood, and we hear judgments and criticisms and don't do this, do that, don't sit like this, sit like that. Every judgment, every harsh criticism is kind of like taking from our well of worth.
You're listening to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. In a society that reminds us to be humble, doesn't take kindly to people being confident, and is quick to identify flaws, our self-worth is too easily lost. If you struggle with confidence and self-doubt, are a perfectionist, overachiever, or people pleaser, then you might be feeling the struggle, and this episode is especially for you. Are you ready for some good news? We are worthy to start. That's right, you are worthy, just as you are. So what we're really doing here is taking back what's already ours. Today, I welcome Jomana Elaridi to the Positively Living podcast to understand why we struggle with self-worth, how it impacts us, and 5 ways we can fill up our well of worth, as she calls it. Dr. Jomana is the proud mom of 2 boys, a university professor, a TEDx speaker, and an ICF certified life, career, and executive coach, as well as an NLP master practitioner. Her niche is self-worth, confidence, and mindset coaching for women. She believes that self-worth and confidence form the foundations upon which most, if not all, aspects of our lives are constructed. She helps ambitious women struggling with not enoughness and self-doubt to reclaim their worth and confidence so they can live the life they want to live as who they truly are. As I close in on 100 episodes of the podcast, you'll notice more and more repeat topics, and for a very important reason. The episodes support each other and give us fresh perspectives with different guests and different angles in which we explore the same topic. But what I love to see is even when we have all those differences, the concepts remain consistent. Like in this episode, when you hear Jomana talk about worthiness. In episodes 29 and 53 with Mallory Jackson, she shares this concept too, and it is so powerful. You'll want to hear it on repeat. You are worthy. Now you have the chance to ensure your actions match that understanding. As Jomana goes through the 5 ways we can take back self-worth, she mentions a gratitude challenge she did that I participated in, and I thought it was brilliant. It's the idea of a self-gratitude practice where you focus solely on you. As a gratitude coach, I love this twist on the traditional practice, and I intend to incorporate it into my free gratitude resource, the Positively Grateful series. By the way, if you'd like access to the gratitude series or to any of the worksheets or free resources that you hear mentioned on this podcast, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources for the full list. Welcome, Jomana Elaridi, to the Positively Living podcast. It has been a while to get here, but I am so thrilled to have you on today.
And I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Lisa.
We have such an important topic to dig into today. But before we do, I would love it if you would share a bit about who you are and who you help and what makes you light up.
Who I am, isn't that the question? well, well, I am a mom of two amazing boys. I'm a wife. I'm a university professor. I'm a certified life, career, and executive coach. I'm an NLP master practitioner. And I think I can confidently say that I'm a self-worth, confidence, and mindset coach for women. And how I got here has been quite the journey. I think everyone goes through their own journey through life. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I realized I had issues with self worth and confidence. And my TEDx talk, which was given in 2018, was aptly titled Confessions of a Struggling Supermom, which talked about the struggles of working mothers in addition to perfectionism and confidence issues in women. By the way, the supermom part of the title was kind of the TEDx curator was like, please, let's use that. And I felt very uncomfortable using it. But after giving the talk, I realized, yes, we do deserve that title. And actually, Lisa, in preparation for that talk, because I was a perfectionist and I wanted everything to be perfect, I did so much research on every aspect of working mothers and gender studies and the ancestral luggage that we carry. And I realized that before I even stepped on stage, my life had changed. Whether I got one view or a million views, my life would never be the same. And it was actually my TEDx talk that inspired me to pursue the path that I'm taking right now.
Wow. It's so interesting to me that it was the TEDx talk that like spurred everything on because usually someone, has some kind of life shift and then they go on to do a TEDx talk. So, I mean, I'm fangirling a little bit because I'm so impressed. And I loved your TEDx talk. So I'll definitely be putting that in the show notes. But what was it that pulled you to that TEDx talk in the first place and just started this ball rolling?
Mm. I had been asked 3 times previously to give a TEDx talk, and I had said, "Oh, what do I have to say that could be of value? Why would anyone listen to me?" And when the TEDx curator said, well, you have so much to say. You're a working mom, you're a perfectionist, you're accomplished, you have it all together. And I'm like, I don't have it all together. And she's like, exactly. And that's what people have to know about. And to be honest, it was my kids that inspired me because of my issues with anxiety and perfectionism. And because I didn't want them to go through what I went through, my eldest son, he struggled a lot because our kids are our mirrors. And so I was going through a phase of every challenge is an opportunity. If you say no and you feel the fear and do it anyway, and all this. And so when my kids saw that I was like, no, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it. And they're like, oh, well, we thought every challenge is an opportunity. Isn't this an opportunity? And that's when I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I knew deep down, I knew maybe that's what I was scared of actually. I knew that my life was going to be different. I knew that on the other side of the fear was going to be a lot of growth. And perhaps subconsciously, I was afraid of that growth.
Wow, that's powerful. And I come back to a phrase that you just used or what you were stating, what you were feeling in the moment. And I think it is so beautifully tied into our conversation today is when they asked you. And your immediate response, your immediate feeling was, what would I have to say of value? I think so many of us can relate to that, right? When I started this podcast, whether it's imposter syndrome or whether it's just that little voice of doubt or whatever, wherever you are on that spectrum of trying to decide if you're brave enough, confident enough, if you feel your worth, there's always something in there that's like, but really, who's going to listen to this? Or how is yours different from what's being said out there? There's so many questions, right, that arise. So that's a beautiful segue into talking about this idea of self-worth. And what are you seeing with it? Does it come from, or where does the lack of it stem from? What's going on there?
Great question. Thank you, Lisa. And actually, because I was so convinced that I didn't have anything really interesting to say, like these are issues that I have, I did a huge survey that I posted on my Facebook and I, sent out to so many women. And it's when I started to see that other women have issues with perfectionism and low confidence and self doubt and people pleasing and seeking external validation was like, holy moly, no, somebody has to talk about this. And yeah, I took on that. So actually, Lisa, we are all born worthy. The way I think about it is that we are born with a well of worth and confidence. And a simple, perhaps, representation of that is when you look at a newborn. This newborn really has done nothing. He's just there. He hasn't acquired any accolades, any accomplishment.
He doesn't contribute to the household.
And yet, this newborn is so valuable. Our value is inherent and innate within us.
Mm.
However, as we go from infanthood to childhood, and we hear judgments and criticisms and don't do this, do that, don't sit like this, sit like that. Every judgment, every harsh criticism is kind of like taking from our well of worth.
Mm.
And then we go into adolescence, and then you have the peers who also, they're taking from each other basically. And we get to a point where, holy moly, I don't feel worthy. We're still worthy. It's just that we don't feel that worth. So what do? We start to look for it from sources outside of ourselves. And here comes the people pleasing, the seeking approval, seeking external validation, because we feel that it's been taken from us and we want it back because feeling worthy, feeling valuable feels good. So we try to get it from outside of ourselves. And here the perfectionism also plays a part because we start to feel like, well, it has to be perfect to be good enough. We begin to associate perfection with good enough.
And that's that thing where we're like, if it's perfect, then we will get the approval we're seeking. So you're seeking, right, this thing, you're seeking this worth, right, that you've lost. And you're like, okay, so I will get approval from outside of me, external validation. Wait, it's not working. Instead of thinking, oh, wait, it's not working because that's not how I get it, we think, oh, I must need to do something differently, right?
Or more.
Or more. Yeah.
Is where you have the achievers and the overachievers. And like it's like we start ticking these boxes, or the way I've described it is it's like we're seeking this high of worth. Get your degree, tick, yes, and you feel worthy and you feel happy for a little while, and then that wears off. Okay, what's the next thing I have to do? What's the next thing I have to achieve? Tick, and then that wears off. And that happened to me. And when I think back, I wasn't even aware of this, Lisa. And this is why I feel this conversation is so important, because up until a few years ago, if you asked me what's self worth, I could give you a textbook definition. And if you had asked me, do you feel you're worthy or do you have a sense of worth? I would have said, yeah, of course I am. But my actions actually don't represent the actions of someone who has high self worth.
I think that is one of the most powerful ways that we see this. And I know that I see it in terms of coaching, where we're talking about how you're spending your days. We're creating a weekly template for being the most productive and positive and happy and satisfied human. And we're talking about things that are necessary for that, like self-care. And as soon as we get into, well, let's create this habit, let's carve out the time, let's create the boundaries around this, there's this hesitancy. And this is why this foundational work is so incredibly important, because no matter how impressive your systems are, no matter how amazing, your habit setup might be, I don't care, you could have the most impressive bullet journal in the world with your habit tracker. But if you don't feel worthy of taking that time to pour into yourself, to give you what you need, you're not going to do the thing.
Or you do it with the wrong intention and for the wrong reasons.
Oh, that's interesting too. So if you do it, it's for a different purpose. It's not to pour into you. It's not true self care in that nourishing kind of way. It becomes another thing on the to do list, right? That will get the external validation you're seeking.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So it could show up as avoidance of doing the thing if you feel like you're not worthy of taking that time off, or it could feel like doing something, but doing it for the wrong reasons. And then in that case, if you're doing something for the wrong reason, you're not going to get the benefit that was intended. You could take time off, but you're not really taking time off.
Absolutely. And what came to mind now, as you're saying this, is when I have clients who say, "Oh yes, I should do meditation. I have to do meditation."
There's that word. That word. Did you hear it? Did you hear it? Should.
Yeah,
Oh, I want to take that word and toss it out the window.
I know, I know. So I need to do meditation. Okay, but then it's just another thing on your to-do list that's going to burden you, and that's not the intention behind the meditation.
Thank you. Yeah, that is so, so important. I just had this conversation with one of my clients, and it was actually relating to that journaling, actually. And so it kind of in that zone, right? And it was like, I should be journaling and I'm not doing it. I'm like, wait, wait, wait. Why? Have you asked yourself why? Well, and it kind of came up with the it's supposed to be good for me. Like, okay, so here's where we stand with this. If you think it's supposed to be good for you and then you do it because it's supposed to be good for you, you're not actually going to get out of it what you're meant to get out of it in the first place or why it's a valuable thing. So you're actually better off not doing it and also not feeling the guilt about not doing it. Whew, yeah, this is multi layered, right?
Oh my God, I could talk for hours, Lisa, about this and how there's so many threads that spread out.
So, the impact of not feeling worthy is that we're not giving ourselves what we need. What else are you seeing when we don't feel worthy that happens?
Well, honestly, you end up having a false sense of self. If you live your life, or when I lived my life, people pleasing. And mind you, I didn't even know that I was people pleasing. I thought I was being polite and kind and respectful because that's how I was raised.
Nurturing, yeah, all of those things, especially as women, I think we're taught.
Absolutely. And so I want to do this, but no, I don't want to upset him or her. Fearing judgment, that fear of judgment from other people. When somebody does not have a solid sense of worth, that fear of judgment really can take over. And the reason why I see a direct connection is because what is fear of judgment? You're fearing other people's opinion of you.
Mhm.
But when you have a solid, healthy sense of worth, that means you value yourself as you are, as the imperfect being that you are. You value yourself. So, why should I care about or give more weight and value to somebody else's opinion of me? Whereas if someone doesn't have a good, healthy sense of worth, they put more value in somebody else's opinion of themselves. And this is where the fear of judgment comes in.
Yeah. And again, all of those things lead back to making choices that aren't going to be, it's not just that they're not going to be true to you, but they're not going to serve you. And then it's just, yeah, it's a compounded thing because then you will also feel, you may not realize it, but you will feel what we call out of alignment, right? And disconnected with that sense of self. That's a really good way to put it. And when you feel the disconnect, when you feel out of alignment and when it doesn't feel right, then there's just something that feels constantly off. And even if you don't realize it consciously, it's like a battery draining you or being drained in the background, right? You know, like when you have your phone and you've got apps running and they're doing stuff and you're not even using them and you don't even realize it and they're draining the battery life on you.
Absolutely. That's a very, very beautiful analogy. Thank you for saying that. So, when someone does have a healthy sense of worth, they value themselves, they value their resources, they value their time, they value their energy, they value their own feelings, they value their space and their money. And I'd like to make something clear actually, because just last week, a good friend of mine asked me, well, Jomana, it's easy for you to say that women should have a healthy sense of worth. Well, you're a professor, you're a TEDx speaker, you have 2 kids, you're a coach, et cetera, et cetera. What can you say to someone who hasn't accomplished so much? And I was like, hang on a second. Sense of worth is basically independent of one's achievements, one's accomplishments, what one owns, the possessions, how much money they have, the car they drive, the degrees they have. It's actually based on who is left over if, God forbid, all of that was taken away from you, on who you are from the inside.
Who you are. Yeah, I see this so much in the productivity side of it. It can also be a trauma response as well. So there's all these things tied in, and I have to give a shout out to Mallory Jackson in the trauma informed life episode and the codependency episode. You're going to see a lot of similar conversations, right, and similar topics and concepts that we're talking about here. And you're right. You start with the worthiness, and it's who you are inherently, but people who feel the need to be ultra productive, which actually becomes a busy trap, right? That's what I see, where they're feeling like, well, I'm not going to be valuable if I'm not doing something.
Exactly. And they associate their worth with their productivity.
So let's let go of that and let's embrace this idea. I loved what you said. You feel the different energy when you're like those who value themselves. When you value yourself, you value your resources, and that feels so good. So take us there, Jomana. And I know you have 5 ways to share with us where we can turn the ship around and embrace that self-worth.
Yes, absolutely. And the way I think about it is you're just taking back what's already yours.
Yes.
And the first thing is, and this may come as a shock to some of your listeners, is accept that you're imperfect. Accept that you are imperfect. Fully accept yourself as who you are. And actually, when you think of who you are and you're aware of the gratitude challenge with a twist that I had running in the first week of January, where I encouraged people to write at least one quality or characteristics of themselves that they value each day. And what was really sad is how many people found it difficult to actually list qualities about themselves that they valued and appreciated. And so here is where I said, are you kind? Are you honest? Are you loyal? Are you trustworthy? Are you hardworking? Are you, adaptable? Yes, 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 I'm all those things. Well, there you go. Write one for each day. And then they would say, but I'm actually really moody and I'm temperamental, or I can be quite selfish. That's okay. Just because you're moody, it doesn't mean that you're any less kind.
Exactly. It doesn't take away your idiosyncrasies, your tendencies, your personality, the things that create like who you are, and how you show up in the world. They don't take away from those things that are inherent in you, right?
Exactly. So embrace all parts of yourself. You're imperfect. Second thing would be to become aware of the critical and negative thoughts. And we can thank the inner critic, which can be quite the bully. And when that bully shows up, I want you to kind of take a step back, become aware of that thought and say, well, actually, what would I tell my best friend or somebody I love so much if they were saying this to themselves? So speak to yourself like you would speak to a loved one.
I love that because the way we speak to ourselves can be so brutal. And it was like, you wouldn't do that to someone that you cared about. Conversely, I really like the memes I've seen out there where it's like, I think I'm going to speak to myself like I speak to my dog from now on. Hi, you're so adorable. Would you like a snack? Right?
I love that. That's so cute. Yeah, very true. And honestly, I've done this practice a lot and I have kind of shushed the inner critic because as soon as it shows up, I think, hang on, if, the inner critic was saying this to my best friend of 26 years, who's also a mom of 2 kids and she's working hard, if she was in my place, I'd be like, don't listen to that. Who are you kidding? You're amazing. You're doing your best. And as much as I love my best friend, I should love myself more. Third thing, acknowledge, appreciate, and celebrate your efforts, your wins, and your successes. Even what you consider to be the small ones. And I say what you consider to be the small ones because often they're not that small, actually. We make them small.
So true. And I'm a big fan of that, celebrating. And I think that's a big part of gratitude too. But it's the idea that we have achieved something and we need to elevate those small steps. We don't want to because you're right. We want to put that down and it wasn't that big a deal. Or you know what else happens is that when we are in our zone of genius, when we are playing to our strengths, which is something that I promote so much, and it's so beautiful. It's the place we're happiest. We kind of forget that the things that we're doing are achievements, are wins, are to be celebrated because it comes so easy to us.
Mm, very true. So beautifully. Yes.
Yeah. So, and I love this acknowledge and appreciate. And I want to pull out something that you mentioned in that list. Sure, there are things, the wins, right, to celebrate and figure that out. But you also mentioned the efforts. And I love that so, so much because that is actually the key to having successful habits because you start small, you celebrate those small wins, but sometimes it's not about getting the result that we wanted from the habit, or maybe even doing the thing, but it's trying the thing. It's making the effort. And I don't think we celebrate that enough. Okay, fine. You didn't win the game, but you played really well. Do we not celebrate that? Why do we not celebrate that? We need to celebrate that. And especially for ourselves, right?
Absolutely. And this is when I knew that I was really recovering from my perfectionism because we generally, as perfectionists, we have this black or white. Either you're perfect or you feel like a failure. Either you've done it and it's perfect or you failed. And now it's like, oh, it's not exactly what I wanted, but you know what? I put a lot of effort and I'm proud of myself. That's fine. And the fact that I can say that now and I see my clients do that just makes me feel so, so good on the inside. Absolutely. Ready for number four?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I am. Go.
These are in random order, by the way, because number four for me would probably be right up there. Setting boundaries. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Preach.
Setting boundaries, just to be clear, is basically saying no when you feel like saying no, when you don't feel like doing something. And you don't really have to do it. There are times that we do things that we don't want to do. Okay. But when you know that you don't really have to do it and you're screaming no from the inside and you put a smile on your face and you go, yes, sure, that's fine. Mm-mm-mm. And what helped me a lot with setting boundaries, Lisa, is I actually equated it to resource management. So when I think about our most precious resources, I think time, energy, money, and then I'm going to add feelings and space. So when you say yes to someone else, whether it's someone at work, someone from your family, a friend, you don't want to do something, you really don't want to do it, and you don't have to do it. And you say yes, that means you're valuing that other person's time, energy, feelings, space, or money. So I don't want them to be upset. I don't want them to get upset with me. So I'm just going to do it. That means you're valuing their feelings over your own.
Oh, I like that, Jamana. It's so important to think about what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to. And that's the technique that I offer all the time is to say, fine, you are welcome to say yes to that, but you need to also acknowledge the no's as well. What did you say no to? And if you're saying no to yourself, have a good reason. I mean, guess what? You get to choose. We have a choice every single time, but you need to explore that. Why are you saying no to yourself? Why are you saying no to those precious resources of yours? Again, you have a choice in each and every scenario, but ask that question. That resource management, I like that a lot. Okay.
And even setting boundaries within yourself, by the way,
Ooh, yeah.
not just with other people. I'll just work an extra hour. I don't have to get that extra half an hour sleep. I'll get up extra early and get this done and that done and that done. And this is especially for those achievers and overachievers that put themselves, I'm not going to say last, but they don't make themselves a priority.
For sure. And this ties back into that idea of being in alignment, of doing what feels right instead of like pushing in a direction that doesn't. And yeah, there's so much to that. It's not only, okay, what am I valuing, but can I trust myself? And trust is a
Mm.
huge part of this whole equation. So it's all tied. It's all connected. How many, you could have a really fun game if you went through each and every podcast episode to listen to how many times I said that statement.
Absolutely. And the fifth one is related to something you said earlier: invest time in yourself. And I would also say invest time, energy, and money in yourself.
Yeah.
You are worth the time to invest in yourself.
Do you think that when you go to invest in yourself that way, investing time, energy, money, I love that there's all different ways that you can do that. When you do that and you create that practice of doing that, that can sort of build up your response, like build the muscle, if you will, of saying, yes, I'm valuable. Like it keeps repeating and reminding you.
Absolutely. That's what it's funny. I said that this morning. It's like stacking. You're stacking. Each time you give yourself time, you invest time in yourself. And when I say invest time in yourself, just give yourself that time and space. It could be to meditate, it could be to read a book, it could be to walk in nature, it could be just to sit down and do nothing at all. You're allowed to do that.
Yeah, and encouraged to. And not only is it what you need, you were talking about resource management. I like to talk about energy management when it comes to being productive, right? You
Mm.
need this, you need to pour into yourself. But here's what's brilliant is that as you're doing that, another aspect of it is what you're saying here that you are now, it's like perpetuating a good thing, right? It reminding you that you are worthy of taking this time. And you can start small, but still, when you build that habit, you're going to be like, yep, okay, this is my time. And I do know why I need this. And it is important. And I am important.
Exactly. Absolutely. It's about activities so that you can take back your worth, that feeling of worth that you were born with. Each time you say no, and you would usually say yes, it's like you're telling yourself, yeah, because my time is important. I don't want to spend it doing somebody else's work.
Yeah. And it will get easier. I just want to encourage you.
Oh, yeah,
The first no is like,
absolutely.
like they're gonna hate me, they're gonna think I'm a horrible person, and you see, but even that response right there is so descriptive, and they are going to, and then you have to be like, but it's about me, and it's not only okay that it's about me, it's so imperative that it is because I'm worthy.
Absolutely. And also because when you keep saying yes, I don't know about you, Lisa, but that resentment starts to build.
Booyah, yeah.
And when you have a genuinely kind, pure heart and you feel this resentment start to bubble up, I really don't like that feeling personally. And so I'll be like, I'd rather as kindly and assertively say no and sit with that discomfort and then let it go rather than have the resentment bubble up.
And you know what you're describing is a distinction too. I think this is so important. When I talked before about, okay, you do something where you say yes to something you didn't want to, and then you're kind of out of alignment and doesn't feel right. Okay. That's the kind that sticks with you and causes problems. The discomfort that you're talking about in terms of getting used to saying no is actually fleeting. It's going to be hard in the moment, but it will go. And the more that you do that with others, especially, in your family, in your community, in your circle, they will get used to it surprisingly fast. Like you think it's going to take so long to get everybody on board, and it really doesn't. You take your stand, and those that love you will respect that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just about giving ourselves permission to say no.
Beautiful. That feels like such a great place to wrap up. Do you have anything else that you want to share? And we have the next steps. Here are 5 steps you could really take any one of them, but it seems like a really great order to do them in. Anything else that you want to share that we can take with us today to take back our self-worth?
I would just add like an addendum would be release and let go of people people who you feel may not be contributing to your growth.
So as you are taking these steps, if you find that there are those in your space that are really and truly resistant to this, that's a good sign that it's time to, as I often say, declutter the toxic people, right?
Love that.
It's
Queen of
decluttering.
decluttering, you are.
Yes. I love that you brought up decluttering. Thank you so much. All right. So before we go on to our fun rapid wrap up, how about you tell us where we can find you online?
Yes, well, on Instagram, and my page is dedicated to all things self-worth, confidence, and mindset. And my website is www.drjomana.com. And you can reach out to me on either of these platforms.
Good. And I'll have that information in the show notes as well to make it super easy. All right. You ready for a wrap up?
Yes, let's do this.
Let's start with, we're filling in the blanks. So a song that lifts my spirits, makes me dance is?
Hey Ya by Outkast.
I
It's an
love that
oldie but a
one.
goodie.
It is an oldie but a goodie, and I love it. And it will go on the Spotify Positively Living Podcast Dance Playlist Volume 3. That's a mouthful, but it's an awesome playlist. 3 volumes, so much fun. And we're going to add Hey Ya to that. I love it. Okay. So we can shake it.
Yes, like a Polaroid picture.
Thank you. I was like, I'm leaving it open. You going to take it? All right. How about a quote or mantra that inspires me that I love to share?
You don't need to earn your worthiness.
Let's say that again louder for the people in the back.
You don't need to earn your worthiness.
Thank you. Beautiful.
You are worthy.
All right. And how about a resource? It could be a book or an app that's just made my life better.
Honestly, it's not so fancy. YouTube.
Oh, I would totally agree. My family's had haircuts for years and did fresh baked bread. You name it. Tutorials on YouTube are like my life. So, yeah.
I was tempted to say a meditation app, but really YouTube, because it has such research. Like all my meditations come from YouTube. My workouts, I use YouTube.
Yes.
TEDx talk, podcasts. Like it's just a wonderful resource when used properly.
Okay. I love it. All right. And now, last but definitely not least, what or whom are you grateful for today, Jomana?
Honestly, Lisa, I'm grateful for my faith because I have such faith in God and the universe, and I have full trust in the universe and its timing, my family, and for you. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful we connected those months ago, and I'm very grateful for you giving me this space to discuss something that's very, very dear to my heart. God bless you.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. And I am so grateful for you to be connected, that you are sharing this message and that you're shining your light so brilliantly in this world and that you shared it with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.